We frequently receive questions on different HSE topics, so we decided to answer those questions and share with you. If you have any interesting questions that you want to be answered, so please write them on the comment part and we will consider them in our next videos. So let's see what's our next question. Following with the method statement, we ended up with hazard. What's hazard?
When it comes to health and safety, it's important to understand the job requirements and to have a good job knowledge. But I'm always positive that this knowledge, this experience we have to gain in practice. Because more you in practice, more you are on the field, you have a better chance, you have more chance to actually learn about what's happening, what surrounds you, what could go wrong actually. Understanding hazards, we have to be on the work site and we have to familiarize the sources of hazards. As we said, we already mentioned the method statement section that we know activities, we know equipment, we know related with human or whether it may be related with location. So what is a hazard? Hazard is something that have a potential to harm people. So hazard is everywhere, so we can't live without, how to say, hazards, for example, because hazard is everywhere. Hazard is electricity is hazard, height is hazard, and animal, maybe some wild animals is a hazard, and sharp edges or awkward places, for example, uneven surfaces. You know, in a day-to-day life, we come across with a lot of hazards. And we somehow control these hazards and put us in a position that they don't hurt us, for example. And so that's something which harms, which has a potential to harm people. So unless we get in touch, we get into contact with the hazards, so nothing happens. So say if the wild animal is in the forest somewhere in jungle, that doesn't do any harm to us. It's far away from us. The problem starts when these two objects, like the target and the hazard, come closer to each other. So they get into contact in some way or another. And these hazards in the workplace are, endless. There are millions of, or maybe hazards in the world, and mostly. If you're doing certain hazardous activities in the workplace, sometimes they all gathered in one place, in one operation. So our role is to identify those hazards and to find out how people may get hurt. So what is the source of the problem? Then having all these number of hazards, it's difficult to define them one by one. So that's why some institutions, the worldwide recognize, for example, I can give one example, like of IOSH, they put the hazards in classification, in groups, for example. And it's easy to define when it's classified, it's easy to understand and to find these hazards. It's what they call is mechanical hazards as firstly, and physical hazards. Mechanical hazards are a group of hazards that are related to the mechanical equipment. Then you have physical hazards, and you have chemicals, and environmental hazards, biological hazards, and of course organizational hazards. So these hazards are grouped together under these categories. Physical hazards are all related with physical activities, likes of vibration, likes of electrical hazards and stuff like that. Then you have chemical hazards, mostly related to the chemicals, different types of chemicals that are hazards to human. And you have biological hazards, which are more related to the biological elements. And then you have environmental, that hazards come from environmental. So we have to be careful when it comes to the environmental hazards. There's a two way of environmental. It's one way actually impact the environment as a result of our operations. That's dealt with under environmental science. That's not health and safety. But the other is what we are talking about here as a hazard, the hazards coming from the environment to us, for example. Weather conditions, if we're working outside, for example, this type of things, this type of effects coming from environment. Then we have organizational hazards. We said organizational hazards are mostly fatigue, like workplace stress and workload. welfare facilities and stuff like that, which impact on people psychologically. So those hazards, they are the source of the different the category of hazards. So when it comes the classification hazard, it's a good element, good way of seeing here that people are mostly focused on the mechanical hazards and physical hazards and chemical hazards, and more or less, maybe a little bit more on biological hazards. But when it comes to environmental and organizational hazards, we find out that there is less attention. There is probably a reason because of the result of many mechanical and chemical or physical hazards are immediately, because if someone falls from height, you see the result immediately, they get hurt immediately, or if someone gets electrocuted, for example, you see the result immediately. So when the results are immediate, people pay more attention on the protecting or eliminating the source of hazard. But when it takes longer, for example, like the workplace stress, so not many organizations or not many places do measure workplace stress or able to analyze the sources of stress, how people get impact, or because the result is a long-term exposure. Is you have to be in the same environment for a long time, exposed to the problem for a long time, and then you get the problem. For example, you get a certain disease, or you get stress, you get other effects of the hazard. So yeah, again, classifying the hazard is a good way of finding where to look at them, what to look at. Otherwise, since there are too many, we can easily get lost. So unless we start looking for them in a structured way.
Thank you for detailed answers. Do you know what question comes next? Subscribe to our channel to find out the next question with us.